My mother-in-law grabbed my homemade cranberry tart and slammed it into the trash can so hard, the lid bounced off and clattered against the kitchen wall. The sound echoed through the dining room, where 14 members of our family sat frozen at the Thanksgiving table. She turned back to face everyone, wiping her hands on her apron like she'd just handled something contaminated. "She can't even cook, how can she raise kids?" Veronica announced, her voice carrying that special tone she reserved for her most cutting observations. The ones she pretended were just honest concerns. My husband Derek just kept cutting his turkey, the knife scraping against the china plate in a steady rhythm. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. His shoulders tensed, but he kept sawing at that piece of meat like his life depended on it. That's when my 9-year-old daughter Hazel stood up from the kids' table, clutching her tablet like a weapon. Her small face was calm, but I recognized the determined set of her jaw, the same expression she'd worn when she corrected her teacher about a math problem in front of the whole class. "Grandma Veronica," Hazel said, her voice clear and steady. "Should I show everyone the video of you at the store last night?" Every fork froze mid-air. Derek's knife finally stopped moving. His brother Nate had a spoonful of mashed potatoes halfway to his mouth, suspended in space like a cartoon. Even the baby in Paulo's arms stopped fussing. Veronica's face went through 3 different colors in the span of 2 seconds. Red, white, then a strange grayish shade I'd never seen before. "What video, dear?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "The one from Wegmans parking lot," Hazel continued, her finger hovering over the tablet screen. "When Dad took us for ice cream after my recital, you were there with Mr. Garrett from your book club." The silence in that dining room was so complete, I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I could hear the ice maker cycling in the refrigerator. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Let me back up and tell you who we all are, because you need to understand what made this moment so explosive. I'm Sienna, 34 years old, and I teach 4th grade at Riverside Elementary. I've been married to Derek for 11 years, and in all that time, I've never once seen him stand up to his mother. Derek is 36, works as a software engineer, and has perfected the art of avoiding conflict by simply pretending it doesn't exist. Our daughter Hazel is 9 going on 40. She reads 3 grades above her level and notices everything. Everything. Our son Milo is 6, sweet as honey, and still believes his grandmother hung the moon despite how she treats me. Then there's Veronica herself, 62 years old, retired bank manager, president of 3 different community organizations, and the unofficial queen of making everyone feel small. She ruled our family gatherings with perfectly manicured nails and backhanded compliments that left you wondering if you'd been insulted or praised. Warren, Derek's father, had long ago retreated into sports and silence. He was sitting in his usual spot in the living room, pretending to watch football but really just avoiding his wife's annual performance of Martha Stewart meets Gordon Ramsay. Derek's sister Jenna was there with her husband Paulo and their toddler. She'd learned to navigate Veronica by agreeing with everything and drinking wine. Lots of wine. Derek's brother Nate had brought his new girlfriend Ashley, who was experiencing her first Hamilton family Thanksgiving and looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. The extended family filled out the rest of the seats. Veronica's sister Dottie, who competed with Veronica over everything from recipes to grandchildren's achievements. My brother-in-law's parents were visiting from Brazil, and thank God they didn't speak enough English to understand most of Veronica's barbs. But now, in this moment, with my daughter standing there holding that tablet like she was about to launch a nuclear missile, none of those dynamics mattered. The hierarchy was about to crumble. "Hazel, sweetheart." Veronica's voice had gone artificially sweet, the way it did when she was trying to maintain control. "Why don't you put that away and finish your dinner? We don't need electronics at the table." "You threw away Mom's dessert," Hazel said simply. "You said mean things about her. That's bullying. Mom teaches us to stand up to bullies." And that's when I knew this Thanksgiving was about to become legendary for all the wrong reasons. I'd been married to Derek for 11 years, and every single Thanksgiving had been hosted at Veronica's pristine colonial house in Connecticut. The dining room looked like something ripped from a Better Homes and Gardens spread, complete with crystal glasses that caught the light just right, china plates with tiny painted turkeys around the edges, and those ridiculous Pilgrim salt shakers she collected from antique stores across New England. She had 47 of them. I knew because she told us every year. This year felt different from the moment we walked through her front door. Usually, Veronica would greet everyone with theatrical hugs and comments about how thin or heavy we looked, depending on her mood. But when we arrived, she stayed in the kitchen, calling out instructions to Derek about where to put our coats, while completely ignoring my presence. Derek didn't notice, or pretended not to. He was already talking to his brother Nate about some work project, leaving me standing in the foyer holding my cranberry tart with candied orange peel. I'd spent 3 days perfecting this recipe. The first batch burned, the second was too sweet, but this third attempt was perfect. The cranberries balanced with just enough sugar, the orange peel adding a sophisticated twist I'd learned from a French cooking show. "Oh, you brought something," Veronica finally said when she emerged from the kitchen, eyeing my dish like I was holding a dead raccoon. "I already made 3 pies and a cheesecake, but I suppose we can find room somewhere." Her sister Dottie chose that moment to arrive with her famous green bean casserole, and Veronica's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Dottie, you brought your signature dish. Everyone, Dottie's here with the green beans we all love." The contrast wasn't lost on me, or on Hazel, who squeezed my hand and whispered, "Your tart looks beautiful, Mom." Derek's sister Jenna pulled me aside while hanging up coats. "Fair warning, she's been in a mood all week. Dad forgot their 40th anniversary on Tuesday. Didn't even remember until she threw his golf magazine at him." Warren was already stationed in his leather recliner, the television volume turned up just loud enough to drown out his wife's commentary from the kitchen. He'd perfected this survival technique over 4 decades of marriage. The house smelled incredible, I had to admit. Sage and butter and roasting turkey filled every corner. Veronica might have been a nightmare of a mother-in-law, but the woman could cook. Her stuffing recipe had been passed down through 4 generations. Her gravy could make you weep with joy. Even her dinner rolls were perfect golden orbs that belonged in a food magazine. "Sienna, you're a teacher," Veronica called from the kitchen. "Maybe you can help Ashley understand the difference between salad forks and dinner forks." She seems confused. Poor Ashley, Nate's girlfriend of 3 months, turned red as she held up 2 nearly identical forks. I walked over and quietly showed her, ignoring Veronica's satisfied smirk. Ashley was 25, worked as a pediatric nurse, and had probably saved more lives this month than Veronica had in her entire career at the bank. But none of that mattered at Veronica's table. Hazel and Milo were setting up at the kids' table, which was really just a card table covered with a paper tablecloth that Veronica deemed appropriate for anyone under 12. Hazel had her tablet out, showing Milo something that made him giggle. "Hazel, honey, what are you watching?" I asked. "Just some videos from last night," she said, not looking up. "Dad took us to Wegmans after my recital for ice cream, remember? We saw the funniest thing in the parking lot." "That's nice, sweetheart," I said, distracted by Derek's cousin arriving with her twins. The house was filling up fast, reaching that critical mass where Veronica would start complaining about people being underfoot while simultaneously being offended if anyone didn't show up. Paulo was helping his toddler color at the kids' table, patiently guiding the crayon away from the wallpaper. Jenna was already on her 2nd glass of wine, a personal record for arriving barely 30 minutes ago. The Brazilian in-laws were nodding and smiling at everything, probably grateful for the language barrier that protected them from understanding the undercurrents of tension flowing through every interaction. "Places, everyone," Veronica called out like she was directing a Broadway show. "Dinner is served in exactly 10 minutes. Derek, you'll carve the turkey. Warren, turn off that television and join your family." The annual performance was about to begin, and we all knew our roles by heart. Dinner started with Veronica's annual tradition of going around the table to share what we were thankful for. She always orchestrated this like a conductor with a symphony, pointing at each person in turn, saving herself for the grand finale where she would deliver a 5-minute speech about gratitude, family values, and usually some thinly veiled criticism of modern society. When she pointed at me, I straightened in my chair. "I'm thankful that my principal nominated me for Teacher of the Year. It's such an honor to be recognized for the work I do with my students." "Participation trophies," Veronica muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear while she adjusted her napkin. "They give those to everyone nowadays. When I worked at the bank, excellence actually meant something." Derek squeezed my knee under the table but kept his eyes on his plate. His signature move when his mother drew blood. "I think it's wonderful," Dottie interjected, surprising me. "Teaching is such important work. Anyone can babysit children," Veronica shot back. "It takes real skill to manage million-dollar accounts." The tension ratcheted up another notch. Jenna poured herself more wine. Paulo started cutting his toddler's turkey into impossibly small pieces. Even Warren looked uncomfortable, clearing his throat in that way that meant he wanted everyone to stop talking. When the main course was finished, I stood to help clear plates and bring out dessert. Veronica had arranged her 3 pies and cheesecake on the sideboard like they were precious artifacts. I placed my cranberry tart with candied orange peel right beside them, the deep red color actually complementing her display beautifully. "Oh, Sienna." Veronica actually laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Bless your heart. You really think anyone wants to eat that after my homemade pies? This isn't one of your school bake sales where parents have to pretend everything tastes good. I'd like to try Mom's tart," Milo said softly from the kids' table, his voice brave but small. "Of course you would, sweetheart," Veronica said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Children don't know any better. They'll eat anything if you put enough sugar in it. That's why childhood obesity is such a problem. Parents who don't know how to cook properly just dump sugar on everything and call it dessert." My face burned. Ashley looked at her plate. Nate shifted. Uncomfortably, the Brazilian in-laws whispered to each other in Portuguese. That's when Veronica did it. She stood up, walked over to the sideboard, and picked up my cranberry tart. The whole glass dish, the one that belonged to my grandmother, the one I'd carefully transported in a special carrier. She carried it into the kitchen, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor like a countdown to disaster. The crash was tremendous. She hadn't just thrown it away. She'd slammed it into her stainless steel trash can with such force that the lid bounced off and hit the wall, leaving a small dent. The glass dish shattered. "This is why I do the cooking," she announced, returning to the dining room while wiping her hands on a dish towel. "She can't even cook a proper dessert. How can she raise kids?" "Derek, your children are getting participation trophies just like their mother. No standards anymore. They probably eat McDonald's 3 nights a week." "That's not true." The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. "Isn't it?" Veronica's eyes glittered dangerously. "When was the last time you made a proper roast? Can you even make gravy without a packet? Do your children know what vegetables taste like when they're not covered in cheese?" The room went silent, except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Jenna's mouth hung open. Paulo had stopped cutting the turkey entirely. Even Warren had turned from the doorway where he'd been trying to escape back to his recliner. "Mom, that's enough," Derek finally said, but his voice was weak, barely a whisper. "Is it?" Veronica shot back, her voice rising. "Someone needs to say it. Your wife spends all day playing school teacher while your children eat takeout and frozen dinners. I see the pizza boxes in your trash when I visit. I know Hazel does her homework at the kitchen table covered in fast food wrappers." That was a lie, a complete fabrication. We ordered pizza once a week, on Fridays, as a family tradition. I cooked every other night real meals with vegetables and proteins and whole grains, but I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat, trapped behind years of swallowing Veronica's poison. "Let's just finish dinner," Derek said quietly, his hand on my arm, holding me in place when every cell in my body wanted to run. I was about to stand up and leave when Hazel pushed back her chair from the kids' table. The metal legs scraped against the floor with a sound that made everyone turn. She'd been silent through the entire dinner, but I recognized that look on her face. It was the same expression she'd worn before winning the school spelling bee, the same one when she'd corrected her principal about a historical fact during an assembly. My daughter was about to do something significant. "Grandma Veronica," she said, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the dining room like a blade. "Remember when we saw you at Wegmans last night?" Veronica's face changed instantly. The smugness vanished, replaced by something I'd never seen before: uncertainty. "I wasn't at Wegmans last night, dear. You must be confused." "No, I'm not confused," Hazel said, taking 3 steps toward the main table, her tablet held confidently in her small hands. "Dad took us for ice cream after my recital. Mint chocolate chip for me, strawberry for Milo. We parked right next to the cart return, and you were 3 spaces over. The specificity of her details made everyone lean in. Even Derek looked up from his plate, confusion written across his face. "You were with someone," Hazel continued, her voice gaining strength. "Mr. Garrett from your book club, the one with the silver hair who drives the blue BMW." The color drained from Veronica's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her hand went to her pearl necklace, fingers wrapping around the strands like they were a lifeline. "Hazel, dear, you must be mistaken," Veronica said, but her voice cracked on the last word. "I'm not mistaken," Hazel said simply. "You were putting shopping bags in his car. There were flowers, yellow roses, the kind you always say are too expensive, and wine bottles. The good kind from the top shelf that you only buy for special occasions." Warren stood up from his recliner in the living room. The leather creaked as he rose, and his footsteps were heavy as he walked to the doorway. "You said you were at Bridge Club last night, Veronica." "I was," Veronica snapped, but her voice had gone shrill. "I went to Bridge Club after I stopped at the store. Bridge Club ends at 8, Dottie said slowly, like she was working out a math problem. "The store closes at 11. I know because I tried to go there last week after book club and they were closing." Hazel turned her tablet toward the table. The screen was black, but her finger hovered over the play button. "Should I press play? The parking lot was really well lit. You can see everything clearly." "You recorded me?" Veronica's voice rose to a pitch I'd never heard before. "That's an invasion of privacy! Derek, control your daughter!" Derek stood up slowly, looking between his mother and Hazel. "What exactly would we see on that video, Mom?" "Nothing. There's nothing to see." But Veronica's hands were shaking now, rattling the pearl necklace. "Then it won't matter if I show everyone," Hazel said, her logic impeccable. "If there's nothing wrong, then there's nothing to hide. That's what Mom always says. Good people don't need secrets." I watched my 9-year-old daughter stand there, facing down the woman who had terrorized me for over a decade, and felt a mixture of pride and concern. This was a nuclear option. Once that video played, there would be no going back. Hazel added, tilting her head slightly. "That was right before you got in his car and drove away. Together, in his BMW, not your Lexus." The room erupted in gasps. Jenna's wine glass hit the table so hard, red wine sloshed onto the white tablecloth. Ashley covered her mouth with both hands. Nate just stared at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Warren walked fully into the dining room, his face shifting from confusion to anger to something deeper and more painful. "Bob Garrett? Bob Garrett from the country club? The man I golf with every Sunday? It's not what you think." Veronica started, but her voice had lost all its power, all its authority. "Then explain it," Warren said, his voice deadly quiet. "Explain why my wife was kissing my golf partner in a grocery store parking lot." Hazel looked at me then, a question in her eyes. She was asking permission, I realized. My brilliant, brave daughter was giving me the choice. I could stop this, tell her to put the tablet away, keep the family peace, or I could let her finish what she'd started. I nodded once, barely a movement, but Hazel saw it. She understood. "That's enough, Hazel," I said, but my voice carried no real authority. My daughter looked at me with those wise brown eyes that had always seemed older than her years. "Mom, you always teach us to stand up to bullies," she said, her words clear and deliberate. "Even when they're family, especially when they're family, because that's when it's hardest." She turned the tablet around and hit play. The video filled the small screen, but in the deadly quiet of the dining room, we could all hear the audio perfectly. There was Veronica in the Wegmans parking lot, laughing in a way I'd never heard her laugh before. Light, genuine, almost girlish. Bob Garrett was loading grocery bags into his trunk while she held the roses, occasionally bringing them to her nose to smell them. I can't believe Warren forgot. Veronica's voice came from the tablet, tinny but unmistakable. 40 years of marriage and he can't remember one anniversary. "You deserve better," Bob Garrett's voice responded. "You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are every single day." On the screen, Veronica put the roses in the back seat, then turned to face Bob. What happened next was definitely not a friendly goodbye. The kiss lasted at least 10 seconds, and there was nothing platonic about the way Bob's hands went to Veronica's waist, or how she ran her fingers through his silver hair. Warren made a sound like someone had punched him in the stomach. The tablet kept playing. "Same time next week?" Bob asked on the video. "Wednesday is better," Veronica replied, smoothing down her blouse. "Warren has his poker game." Hazel pressed pause. The silence that followed was absolute. Warren's face had gone from red to white to a strange purple color. 40 years, he said, his voice broken. 40 years, and this is what you do? With Bob Garrett? You forgot our anniversary, Veronica exploded, all pretense gone. You forgot. Just like you forgot my birthday last year, and Mother's Day the year before that. So, you're having an affair with Bob Garrett? Warren's voice boomed now, shaking the crystal glasses on the table. It's not an affair. Veronica stood up, knocking over her wine glass. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. We're just friends who happen to appreciate each other. He notices when I get my hair done. He compliments my cooking. He actually talks to me instead of staring at a television screen all day like I don't exist. Friends don't kiss like that, Mom, Jenna said quietly, her voice thick with unshed tears. Derek finally found his spine, standing up to face his mother. How long has this been going on? That's none of your business, Veronica snapped, but she was cornered now, and she knew it. It became my business when you attacked my wife, Derek said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. You stand there throwing away her dessert, insulting her cooking, questioning her ability as a mother, all while you're sneaking around with Dad's golf partner? How? Dare you judge me, Veronica hissed. You have no idea what it's like to be invisible in your own home, to be taken for granted every single day. So you attack Sienna to make yourself feel better? Derek's voice rose. You insult my wife, the mother of my children, because you're unhappy in your marriage? You make her feel worthless because you feel worthless? The truth of his words hit everyone like a physical blow. That's exactly what she'd been doing. Every cruel comment, every backhanded compliment, every public humiliation had been Veronica projecting her own misery onto me. I don't have to explain myself in my own home. Veronica grabbed her pearls so hard I thought they might break. Actually, you do, Warren said, his voice flat and final. Pack a bag. You can stay at Bob's tonight. You can't throw me out of my own house, Veronica shrieked. Watch me, Warren said. 40 years, Veronica. 40 years I've put up with your moods, your criticism, your need to control everything and everyone. But cheating? That's where I draw the line. The room erupted into chaos. Jenna started crying, mascara running down her cheeks. Paulo picked up their toddler and took him outside, away from the shouting. Nate was on his phone, probably texting his siblings who hadn't come. Ashley looked like she wanted to dissolve into the floor. Dottie stood up and walked over to her sister. Veronica, you need to leave, now, before this gets worse. It can't get worse, Veronica screamed. That child just destroyed my marriage. No, Mom, Derek said firmly. You destroyed your marriage. Hazel just showed us who you really are. We left shortly after that explosion. Derek carried sleeping Milo to the car while I held Hazel's hand, her small fingers intertwined with mine as we walked through the November cold. The other family members were still inside, voices raised, picking sides, assigning blame. We didn't need to be part of that. We'd already played our role in this Thanksgiving disaster. In the car, Hazel broke the silence first. Did I do the right thing, Mom? I turned to look at my daughter, really look at her. She wasn't seeking validation or praise. She genuinely wanted to know if she'd made the right moral choice. That's who Hazel was, someone who thought deeply about right and wrong, even at 9 years old. You stood up for me when no one else would, I said carefully. That took incredible courage. But Grandma's secrets weren't really ours to tell. Sometimes doing the right thing and doing the kind thing aren't the same. Dad should have stood up for you, she said, looking directly at Derek in the driver's seat. He should have said something a long time ago. Derek's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You're right, sweetheart. You're absolutely right. I've been letting her treat your mom badly for years because I didn't want to rock the boat. I was a coward. He looked at me then, his eyes wet. I'm sorry, Sienna. I'm so deeply sorry. You deserved better from me. You deserved a husband who would protect you, defend you, make you feel valued. Instead, I sat there like a fool, cutting my turkey while my mother abused you. It wasn't your job to save me, I said, though part of me had been waiting 11 years to hear those words. Yes, it was, Derek said firmly. When I married you, I promised to put you first. I broke that promise every single time I stayed silent. We drove home through empty streets, everyone else still at their own family gatherings, probably having normal Thanksgiving arguments about politics or football, not watching marriages implode over grocery store parking lot videos. The next morning, Derek was up before dawn. I found him in the kitchen with my recipe card, the one for cranberry tart with candied orange peel. He had cranberries simmering on the stove, orange peels candying in sugar syrup, and 3 failed tart shells in the trash. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Making it right," he said, "or trying to. I called Mom and told her she's not welcome at Christmas unless she apologizes to you. Really apologizes, not that fake thing she does where she says she's sorry you feel that way. And your dad? He's staying with Nate. They're filing for separation, apparently. But here's the crazy part. Dad says he's almost relieved. He told me he'd been miserable for years but didn't know how to leave. He's 71 and talking about taking cooking classes and joining a hiking club." Hazel came downstairs in her unicorn pajamas, her tablet nowhere in sight. "Mom, I deleted the video. Nobody else needs to see it. I only kept it long enough to make sure Grandma couldn't say we were lying." I hugged her tight, breathing in her strawberry shampoo smell. "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from you," she said simply. "You always stay calm, even when people are mean. But sometimes, staying calm isn't enough. Sometimes you need to show people the truth, even if it hurts." 3 weeks later, my phone rang. Veronica's name on the caller ID made my stomach clench. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "I need your cranberry tart recipe," she said without preamble. "No hello, no how are you, certainly no apology. Bob wants to try it. He loves cranberries." I could have been petty. I could have refused or given her the wrong measurements. Instead, I emailed her the recipe, the real one, with all my notes about temperature and timing, because that's what family does. We share what we have, even with the people who throw our offerings in the trash. But I also included a note, "Next Thanksgiving we're hosting. My house, my rules. You're welcome to come if you can be civil," she replied with just one word, "fair." And for the first time in 11 years, it actually was fair. Derek and I grew stronger, no longer under Veronica's thumb. Hazel learned that standing up for what's right sometimes means revealing uncomfortable truths. And somewhere in Connecticut, a 62-year-old woman was starting over with a man who noticed her haircuts, while her husband of 40 years was learning to cook. Sometimes the most thankful thing you can be is free. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to stand up to family bullies. Comment below with your own Thanksgiving disaster stories. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about families, truth, and finding the courage to speak up. Thank you for watching, and remember, you deserve to be treated with respect, especially by the people who claim to love you.